Welcome back to Long Distance Work Life, where we help you lead, work, and thrive in remote and hybrid teams. I'm Marissa Eikenberry, and joining me is my co-host and remote work expert, Wayne Chabelle. Hi, Wayne.
Hello, that would be me. Hi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I am swell in the great scheme of things.
Well, I'm sure you're going to be even more swell. If not, your brain will explode here shortly as we're tackling the big question of, is this the end of remote work or just the beginning of a new conversation? So one of the things that I know you've been talking a lot about lately is that Amazon just decided that everyone is returning to office. And if you didn't want to do that, well, have fun finding a new job. So why do you think that some companies like Amazon are pushing for this full return to office mandates despite remote work being successful during the pandemic?
Okay, so there's about 5 things to unpack in that sentence that you just did.
That's fair. I kind of gave you a loaded question, right?
There was a lot going on there. First of all, were we successful during the pandemic? Generally speaking, yes. Work got done, productivity, depending on the type of job, rose or fell a little bit. People generally got their work done. Why? Because people generally get their work done. There are people who don't, and there are people who overachieve, and it all kind of averages out in the great scheme of things. But how does this apply to companies wanting to go back to the blessed before times? And I think there are, and I didn't write this down, so you have to count for me. I think there are 3 major things going on.
Okay.
Number one is companies have tons of money invested in real estate, space, equipment, all of this stuff. And when a CFO or a CEO walks into a building that is 50% empty, they have an immediate visceral reaction.
Right. They're not getting a return on their investment. Yeah.
It's not unreasonable, because the question is, well, this doesn't make any sense. And here's the problem. If I have kind of negotiated that you're going to spend 3 days in the office and 2 days out, you can't shrink your footprint because you need space for the people who come in Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. If everybody's there those days, you still need as much space as you had before.
Right.
So there is a sunk cost factor to all of this that is not unreasonable. I mean, if we're going to change the way we work, if we're going to change the size of our footprint, we need to re-examine what it means to have an office and what does it mean to have physical space and what should that physical space look like, which is a really big conversation that is harder to have than let's get people back.
Right.
Right. It's a big problem that requires heavy thought and radically changing what you do. And business is not primed for that for the most part. The second thing I think is that it depends on the kind of business that you're in. And it's funny because Kevin and I are constantly on these lists of best remote thinkers and all that stuff. And I say that not to say, look at me, I'm on cool lists, but to say that we get lumped in with the 4-day work week, death to the office, do your job on the beach kind of people. And we're really not.
Right. We've talked about this before.
Every business has to examine what it does and how does it serve its clients and what kind of company does it want to be when it grows up. And you look at a company like Amazon, and for all of their cool computer servers and algorithms that torture artists on a regular basis, the fact of the matter is they are a 20th century horse and buggy business.
Yeah.
They have warehouses full of stuff. That stuff needs to go on wagons. The wagons go to people's homes. That's their business, right?
Right.
And so, an old school approach is not the most unreasonable thing. The third thing I think has to do with the kind of management company you want to be. And what I am going to say is information based on publicly available data. It is not, Jeff Bezos does not need me to tell him how to run a business.
Right. Jeff Bezos
Clearly,
does not know who we are.
Yeah, well, but I'm sure his lawyers do. A simple Google search can flag that.
Right.
But here's the thing. Amazon has a management style that they take pride in, which is produce or die. Do as you're told, do what we say, and nobody gets hurt. I mean, that's basically their style. They have 150% turnover every year.
Ooh, I'm not sure I realized it was that high.
Most of that is in their warehouse staff, which are not working remotely anyway, right? Mm-hmm. The number is lower than that for admin and office staff, but it's still a pretty high turnover organization, and that's how they choose to operate. They always have. As we in Las Vegas, where there is a big Amazon presence, we like to say everybody knows a lot of people who used to work at Amazon.
My stepdad used to work at Amazon, but we're in Indianapolis. But yes.
Right? They have high turnover. It's march or die. This is how they choose to operate. And they are free to do so. I mean, it's their business, their rules. Now, you asked a question, because I was paying attention. So those are the three things, right? There's kind of this legacy real estate problem, which is tied to CEO ego. There's what kind of business are you in? And then there is what's your general attitude towards your people. It was three, and I remember
you did. You did.
Yay. So you have to start thinking about what is this going to mean in the long run. In the short term, along with the announcement that Amazon was going to do this, announced that they were cutting their management staff by 15% and increasing the number of direct reports each manager would have. Well, it would not be the worst thing if I were at Amazon to say everybody has to come back to the office and 10 or 12% of your managers said, the heck with that, I'm going to find a job somewhere else. And they go, okay, that's done.
Right.
They insist this is not a health way of laying off managers.
BS.
Intentional, unintentional, the result is probably going to be about the same net debt. It also makes sense, if you want to have that in-office mentality, divesting yourself of the people who don't share that mentality is probably not a bad policy. I mean, you want people who are going to buy in, right?
Of course.
Now, what is this going to mean long term? And this is where you start to look at other companies besides Amazon. Google said a year and a half ago, everybody get your crap back to the office. And there was plenty of pushback to the point where, quiet as it's kept, more people working there every day than there used to be, but they ain't all there. Now, you had sent me an interesting article about Ubisoft.
For the gamers in the audience and the ones that do not know, Ubisoft is a very, very, very large gaming company. If you're familiar with things like Rayman or Assassin's Creed, they make those games. And yeah, to your point, like I saw this article just the other day that employees in France are actually threatening to strike over return to office mandates. And at the time that we're recording this, that strike hasn't happened yet. But by the time you're listening to this, if the strike goes through, it will have already happened. So I'll be linking to a story from PC Gamer about it, and I'm sure there will be updates on it as you're listening to this. But speaking of that, we've been talking about Amazon in the US a lot here, but do you think that we're going to see more worker pushback globally against these policies, like what Ubisoft is doing in France?
Well, I think worker pushback. We are in, and I've said this before, and people are rolling their eyes and getting tired of hearing me say it. We are in the middle of a seismic change in what it means to have a job. What does it mean to work for somebody? What does it mean to have employees, right? All this stuff is changing, probably more dramatically than since the 1920s or 30s, when we got a 40-hour work week and a 5-day a week schedule, and people commuting. This seismic change that nobody really knows where it's going to wind up. Part of it, and the Ubisoft employees, I'm surprised that it's happening. I'm not surprised that it's happening in France, because France has a long history of work stoppages and using their protest, and certainly much more so than North Americans do. But it speaks to the fact that there is a generational change. There is a change based on the type of work one does that changes people's relationship with their employer, and whether they feel like where the work gets done is important as what work gets done. I mean, if you're a coder and you're spending your time in the dark with your mother shoving food to you under the door, and any hour of the day or night you can get inspired and work on stuff, swiping a bag at 9 o'clock every morning may be of questionable value.
Right.
The other thing, and I'm verging on breaking one of our sacred rules at the Kevin Eikenberry Group, which is not to be political. But there is a sense in the workplace right now, and every study is kind of bearing this out. As benefits start to go away for more and more employees, Boeing, for example, just announced it's dropping healthcare for its employees. People want a sense of being able to earn something or have a perk, and one of the few negotiables at this moment is work flexibility.
Right.
It's one of the few things that employers go, yeah, okay, if you want to stay home Monday and Friday, knock yourself out. Aren't we benevolent? It's a short-sighted policy. It's a short-sighted policy on the part of the employees. It's a short-sighted policy on the part of the employer, but it keeps people from quitting or gives people enough motivation to come and work for you. But we're in the middle of all of this chaos, where it used to be that if you wanted to work in a certain field or something, there was a place that you went and did that. Now you have a few more options about where you work. What I would say about this, and I've babbled a lot and we've covered a lot of ground, but let me kind of boil this down to a couple of things. For employers, it is going to be a matter of time before they figure out what are the things that are really important to them. What is the return on investment for having these big real estate kind of investments? And what kind of people do they want to attract? We've said before that, when you say we have flexible work or remote work, but you need to be in the office once a week, you've really said, I want the best people I can get who live within 20 minutes of the office.
Right. You don't really want the best people.
Right? I mean, which is fine. That was always who they were hiring. But with remote work and the advent of kind of dispersed work, and we've reached this point where, we could hire different people. We could hire a different type of employee, but not if we're stuck with that old paradigm. It is totally the company's right to do that. It's the golden rule. The one with the gold makes the rules.
Right. Right.
Now I'm going to say something which is perhaps unpopular with some of our listeners, which is what will make this work, increased remote work, is that we as the employees need to prove that we are worthy of it. We need proof of concept. We need proof that the employer is not giving everything up by letting us do that. A lot of the arguments that people use about remote work are, well, I want time with my family. I want this. I want that. Well, that's nice. Your boss doesn't really care.
Right. Right. It doesn't benefit
Satisfied
them.
employees are important only insofar as it affects your work.
Mm-hmm. Well, so real quick, I'm going to go slightly off on
it's going to take a while. Okay.
Oh, I think we had a slight delay, but I think it's solved now. I was just going to say, on this same line, as we're talking about, employers and CEOs, a recent survey of CEOs actually suggests that remote work will be dead in 3 years. What is influencing this belief? Like, is it just wishful thinking?
Mostly it's wishful thinking. I mean, there was a CEO in the UK who was famous for a microsecond for saying what we really need is 20% unemployment, so all these people will remember who they are.
I remember us talking about that in a past episode. I'll have to go find it and link it.
So there's some of that. Here's what it's going to take. And I don't know who's going to do it. I don't know how they're going to step up. When somebody becomes the next Google, when somebody becomes the next big company with a remote first policy, people will start to pay attention on a larger basis. Right now, the companies that are successful remote first are very niche in terms of the industry that they're in, and they tend to be fairly small. They tend to be startups. When a company reaches mega status and works in this new way, follows this new, God help me, I use the word paradigm, then it will start because people follow the leaders.
Right.
And so that's what it's going to take. Somebody's got to really break out of the box, or remote work is going to continue to be team by team, organization by organization, bit by bit. And it's never going to 100% take over.
Right, of course. And we don't expect it to.
Are still going to be, well, if you listen to people out there, everything is binary, right? Either it's death to the office and burn your ties and you never have to go back into the office again, seize the means of production, kumbaya, or that was a lovely little experiment, get your butt back to your desk.
That's fair.
And I don't think it's going to be that simple, but our goal in with this show, and I hope our listeners understand this, our goal is just whatever the situation is, whatever your situation is, find a way to make it work, right? Make some good decisions about your own attitudes, your own behaviors, and your own choices so that you can navigate this crazy changing workplace and keep body, soul, and spirit intact and the weasels away from your ankles. That's what we're here for.
Right. So, Wayne, thank you so much for this conversation. There was a lot of stuff that I would have loved to get to, but we do not have time. So probably another show. And before we go, the second edition of the Long Distance Leader is now available. This updated guide is perfect for navigating today's remote and hybrid work environments. With new principles and proven strategies, Kevin Eikenberry and Wayne Trammell show you how to lead effectively no matter where your team is located. Don't miss out on the latest insights and exercises designed to boost productivity and morale. Order your copy now at longdistanceworklife.com/LDL and strengthen your remote leadership skills today. And thank you so much for listening to the Long Distance Work Life. For show notes, transcripts, and other resources, make sure to visit longdistanceworklife.com. If you haven't yet, subscribe to the show so you don't miss any future episodes. And if you're on Apple or Spotify, please give us a rating and review. Your feedback helps us improve and reach more listeners just like you. Feel free to contact us via email or LinkedIn with the links in our show notes, and let us know you listened to this episode or suggest a topic for Wayne and I to tackle in a future episode. We would love to hear from you. Thank you for joining us. And as Wayne likes to say, don't let the weasels get you down.